My father's casket sat at the front of the chapel, surrounded by white lilies that I didn't choose. I stood in the back row, scanning the entrance every 30 seconds, waiting for my husband to appear. He promised he'd handle everything. The funeral arrangements, the payments, the coordination with the director. "You just grieve, Nora," he'd said, kissing my forehead 6 days ago when Dad died. "I've got this." But the ceremony started 15 minutes ago, and his seat remained empty. The officiant kept glancing at me nervously, adjusting his collar. Finally, during the opening prayer, the funeral director bent down beside me. Her perfume was too strong, her whisper too loud. "Mrs. Patterson, there's a problem with the payment. Your husband's wire transfer never arrived. We need to speak privately before we can proceed with the burial." My stomach dropped. Every head in that chapel turned toward me as I stood up, yet my black dress suddenly too tight, my breath catching in my throat. Where was Derek? And what did she mean the money never arrived? I stepped into the funeral home's cramped office, my hands shaking as I pulled out my phone. 3 calls to my husband. All 3 went straight to voicemail. The funeral director sat across from me, her expression carefully neutral, professionally sympathetic. "I'm sure it's just a banking error," she said softly. "But we do need payment before we can proceed with the burial service." I stared at her. "He said he wired the money 3 days ago. $4,200. She shook her head gently. "We haven't received anything, Mrs. Patterson. We've been trying to reach Mr. Patterson since yesterday morning." Yesterday. While I was writing my father's eulogy, I opened my banking app with trembling fingers, logging into our joint checking account, the one Derek said he'd use for funeral expenses. My vision blurred as the screen loaded. The balance showed $173. I scrolled up to check recent transactions. My breath stopped. The $4,200 hadn't been wired to the funeral home. It had been withdrawn in cash 4 days ago. I kept scrolling, each transaction making my chest tighter. The cash withdrawal was just the beginning. Bar charges from the past 5 days. Restaurant bills I didn't recognize. 2 separate hotel bookings. A liquor store purchase for $280. All of them time-stamped over the 6 days since my father died. All of them in cities I'd never heard Derek mention. I looked up at the funeral director, forcing words through my closing throat. "Can you give me 15 minutes? I need to make some calls." She nodded, squeezing my hand before leaving me alone in that small, suffocating room. I called our bank, waiting through 4 minutes of hold music, while my father's body waited in the chapel. "I need to verify some recent transactions," I told the representative, reading off the dates and amounts. She confirmed each one. They were all legitimate charges on Derek's debit card. "And the cash withdrawal on the 6th? I asked. "Approved at an ATM in Brookfield at 11:47 p.m., she said. Brookfield was 3 hours away. Derek told me he was working late that night, handling a client emergency. I'd been at the hospital with my dying father, holding his hand while Derek was 3 hours away withdrawing funeral money at midnight. I clicked on the most recent hotel charge. $647 from last night. The description read, Lakeview Resort, Premium Suite. I pulled up the hotel's website on my phone. It wasn't a business hotel. It was a romantic getaway spot with couples packages and sunset views. My hands had stopped shaking. Something cold settled into my chest, replacing the panic with razor-sharp clarity. Derek hadn't forgotten to wire the money. He'd spent it. While I planned my father's funeral, while I wrote his obituary, while I picked out his casket, my husband was at a resort 3 hours away. The funeral director knocked softly. "Mrs. Patterson? The guests are asking." "I need to borrow money," I interrupted. "From my aunt. Can you wait 20 more minutes?" My Aunt Catherine came through without questions, transferring the money immediately when I called. I paid for my father's funeral with borrowed funds while my husband's location remained a mystery. The burial happened without Derek. I stood at the graveside, accepting condolences from relatives who whispered about his absence. "Work emergency," I told them. The lie tasting like poison. "He's devastated he couldn't be here." When they lowered my father into the ground, I didn't cry. I watched the casket descend, my mind cataloging everything I needed to do. Check our other accounts. Find out where Derek actually was. Figure out what the hell was happening to my marriage. My cousin drove me home afterward, filling the silence with awkward small talk I barely heard. The house felt different when I walked in. Emptier. Like Derek had already left, even though his things were still there. I went straight to our home office and logged into our bank accounts. All of them. Checking, savings, credit cards. What I found made my blood run cold. Our savings account, the one we'd been building for 3 years, was nearly empty. $47,000 reduced to $1,800. The withdrawals had been happening for months, small enough that I hadn't noticed. $500 here, $800 there. But in the past 2 weeks since my father went into the hospital, the amounts had increased. $2,000, $3,500, $4,000. I pulled up our credit card statements, cash advances, hotel charges in 4 different cities, restaurant bills for 2 people when Derek claimed to be traveling alone for work, spa packages, jewelry purchases I'd never received. My phone sat silent on the desk. Derek still hadn't called, hadn't texted. It was 8 p.m., 6 hours after my father's burial, and my husband had vanished. I opened my laptop and did something I'd never done before. I logged into our cell phone account and pulled up Derek's phone records. The data usage showed his phone was active. He was ignoring my calls deliberately. I scrolled through Derek's call log, seeing numbers I didn't recognize. One number appeared constantly. Multiple calls per day, some lasting over an hour. I copied the number and reverse searched it online. The result showed a LinkedIn profile. Vanessa Brooks, marketing director at Derek's company. Her profile picture showed a woman about my age, blonde, smiling at some corporate event. I clicked through her photos. There, 3 pictures down, was Derek, his arm around her shoulders at what looked like a conference. The photo was tagged from 4 months ago. I felt nothing. No tears, no rage, just that same cold clarity that had settled in at the funeral home. I took screenshots of everything, the bank withdrawals, the hotel charges, the phone records, Vanessa's profile. Then I heard a car in the driveway. I closed my laptop and walked downstairs, turning off most of the lights. When Derek walked in, I was sitting on the couch in the dark, waiting, just like I'd been waiting at the cemetery, waiting for him to come home and lie to my face. Derek stopped in the doorway when he saw me, his keys jangling in his hand. "Nora, Jesus, you scared me. Why are you sitting in the dark?" He moved toward the light switch. I didn't answer, didn't move. Let him turn on the lights and see my face. "I'm so sorry about the funeral," he started, his voice cracking with manufactured emotion. "My phone died and I was stuck in traffic from the airport. There was an accident on the interstate. I've been trying to get home for hours." He'd had 6 hours to prepare this lie. This was the best he could do. "Which airport?" I asked quietly. He blinked. "Logan, I was in Pittsburgh for the Henderson account. I told you that." "You told me you'd be back yesterday," I said. "You promised you'd handle the funeral arrangements." Derek ran his hand through his hair, the gesture of a frustrated man being unreasonably questioned. "I tried, Nora. I wired the money like I said. If the funeral home didn't receive it, that's their banking issue, not mine." "You didn't wire anything," I said. "You withdrew $4,200 in cash from our checking account 4 days ago, at an ATM in Brookfield at 11:47 p.m. Derek's face went blank for half a second. Then the excuses started tumbling out. "That was for something else, work-related. I put the funeral money in from a different account. If they're saying they didn't get it, I'll call the bank tomorrow and straighten it out." "Stop," I said. The word came out harder than I intended. "Just stop lying." He stared at me. I pulled out my phone, showed him the bank statement I'd screenshot. "You withdrew funeral money and spent 6 days at hotels and restaurants while my father died. You spent $600 at Lakeview Resort last night while I buried him." Derek's expression shifted from defensive to calculating. "You're going through our bank accounts, checking up on me while you should be grieving?" The audacity of turning this around on me would have worked a week ago, before I'd spent 6 hours documenting his lies. "Where were you?" I asked again. "Tell me the truth." Derek stood there, working through his options. I could see him weighing which lie might still work, which version of the truth he could sell. Finally he sighed, sitting down across from me, like a man preparing to make a confession. "Okay, you're right. I wasn't in Pittsburgh." My heart hammered, but I kept my face neutral. "Waiting. I was overwhelmed," he continued. Your dad's illness, the hospital visits, watching you fall apart. I needed a break. I needed space to think. He leaned forward, reaching for my hand. I didn't pull away. I should have told you. I should have been honest. But I knew you needed me, and I felt guilty for needing time away. So I made up the work trip. It was almost believable. The exhausted husband, the caretaker fatigue, the shame of needing distance during a crisis, almost. Who's Vanessa Brooks? I asked. Derek's hand went rigid around mine. What? Vanessa Brooks, marketing director? You called her 47 times in the past 2 weeks. The color drained from Derek's face. You're tracking my phone calls now? This is insane, Nora. You're grieving and you're not thinking straight. He stood up, pacing to the window. Vanessa is a colleague. We're working on a major campaign together. Of course I call her frequently. At midnight? I asked. At 2 in the morning? Hour-long calls while I was at the hospital with my dying father? Derek spun around. I'm not doing this. I'm not going to stand here and defend my work relationships while you're acting paranoid and controlling. The gaslighting was textbook. Make me doubt my own perception. Make me the unstable one. Where were you today? I asked one more time. At my father's funeral. Where were you really? He grabbed his jacket. I'm staying at a hotel tonight. You need space to calm down and I need space from this interrogation. He walked toward the door. I didn't stop him. I just watched him leave, his performance falling apart under basic questions. The door slammed. His car started. I sat in the empty house and opened my laptop again. I didn't sleep that night. I spent 12 hours building a timeline. Every hotel charge matched to dates Derek claimed to be working late. Every restaurant bill cross-referenced with his supposed business dinners. Every cash withdrawal mapped to days I was preoccupied with my father's declining health. The pattern was meticulous. Derek had been systematically stealing from our accounts for 8 months, escalating as my father got sicker. He knew I was distracted. He knew I wasn't checking our finances. He used my grief as cover for theft. At 6 a.m., I called the one person I knew could help. My college roommate, Angela, was a divorce attorney in Boston. We hadn't spoken in months, but she answered on the second ring. Nora? Is everything okay? My father died 6 days ago, I said, and I think my husband is having an affair and stealing from our accounts. There was a pause. Then Angela's voice changed, becoming sharp and professional. Don't confront him again. Don't delete anything. Can you come to my office today? I met Angela at 9 a.m. in her downtown office. She looked exactly like I remembered. Sharp suit, sharper eyes, no patience for men who thought they were clever. I showed her everything. The bank statements, the phone records, the hotel charges, Vanessa's LinkedIn profile. Angela went through each document methodically, taking notes in precise handwriting. When I finished, she looked up at me. How angry are you? The question surprised me. I don't know. Numb, mostly. Good, Angela said. Angry people make mistakes. Numb people make plans. She leaned back in her chair. Your husband has been embezzling from marital assets. Depending on how much he's taken and where it went, this could be financial abuse. We need to establish the full scope before we act. I just want out, I said. Angela shook her head. You want justice. And to get justice, we need more evidence. Specifically, we need to know where that money went. She wrote something on her legal pad. Can you access his laptop? He keeps it password protected, I said. Angela smiled slightly. But you know his passwords, don't you? People always use the same few variations. She was right. Derek used our wedding date, his mother's birthday, and our dog's name for everything. I need you to copy his hard drive, Angela said. Bank records, emails, anything financial. We're looking for proof of where the money went and who he spent it on. That feels illegal, I said. It's a shared marital computer in a shared marital home, Angela corrected. You have every legal right to access it, especially if you suspect financial fraud. She handed me a USB drive. This has software that'll copy everything. It takes about 20 minutes. Can you do it tonight? I thought about Derek at some hotel, probably with Vanessa, thinking he'd successfully deflected my questions. Yes, I said, I can do it. Angela's expression softened slightly. I'm sorry about your father, but he'd be proud of how you're handling this. Derek came home that evening with apologies and flowers. White roses, my favorites, which meant he'd stopped to plan this performance. I'm sorry about last night, he said, pulling me into a hug I had to force myself not to resist. You were right to question me. I wasn't where I said I'd be, and I should have just told you the truth. I let him hold me, thinking about the USB drive hidden in my pocket. Where were you? I asked quietly. At a hotel, like I said, but alone. I just needed to clear my head. He pulled back, looking into my eyes with practiced sincerity. Losing your dad, watching you hurt, it scared me. Made me realize how fragile everything is. I handled it badly. It was a better lie than last night's, more thoughtful. He'd had time to craft it. I understand, I said, playing the forgiving wife. I'm scared too. Derek kissed my forehead. We're going to get through this together. I promise. He went upstairs to shower. I waited until I heard the water running, then grabbed his laptop from his briefcase. My hands shook as I inserted the USB drive, watching the software load. The screen showed a progress bar. Estimated time 19 minutes. I could hear water running upstairs, Derek's off-key humming. 17 minutes. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the laptop, willing it to copy faster. What if he finished showering early? What if he came downstairs and caught me? 12 minutes. I opened Derek's email, scanning through subject lines. Most were work-related, boring corporate correspondence. Then I saw a folder labeled Personal V. 8 minutes. I clicked it open. The emails went back 6 months, plans for weekend trips, hotel confirmations, photos I couldn't make myself look at. Derek called Vanessa baby. He called me the situation at home. 5 minutes. One email from 3 weeks ago right after my father was hospitalized. Perfect timing. She'll be too distracted to notice I'm gone. Finally, we can spend real time together. My father's dying gave Derek freedom to be with his mistress. 2 minutes. The progress bar reached 100%. I ejected the USB drive and closed the laptop just as the shower turned off upstairs. Derek came down 20 minutes later in clean clothes, smelling like soap and cologne. I was making tea, the picture of domestic normalcy. Want some? I asked. Sure, he said, kissing my neck. I was thinking we should talk about finances, get everything organized properly. I froze. Why now? Your father's passing, Derek said carefully. There might be estate issues eventually, and honestly, our accounts are a mess. We should consolidate everything, maybe refinance the house while rates are reasonable. I can handle it all. Take that burden off you. I poured hot water over tea bags, my hands steady. What kind of consolidation? Just moving things around for better organization, Derek said smoothly. I found a financial advisor who specializes in estate planning and debt management. He can help us structure everything properly. I just need you to sign some paperwork so I can act on both our behalf. What kind of paperwork? I asked, handing him the tea. Account authorization forms mostly, he said. Standard stuff. I'll bring them home tomorrow. That night, after Derek fell asleep, I went through the files from his laptop. Angela was right. Every password was a variation of 3 combinations. I found spreadsheets tracking his spending on Vanessa. Restaurant bills, hotel rooms, jewelry, weekend trips. $47,000 in 8 months, our entire savings spent on his mistress. But I found something worse in a folder labeled Financial Planning. Documents for a home equity line of credit. $75,000 borrowed against our house. Papers with my signature forged on the application. The loan had been approved 3 weeks ago, funded to an account I'd never seen before. Derek had used my identity and our house to steal $75,000. I photographed every document, uploading them to a secure cloud folder Angela had created. Then I found the authorization forms Derek mentioned. They weren't simple account access papers. They were debt transfer agreements. Every fraudulent loan, every stolen dollar, transferred entirely into my name as sole account holder. Derek planned to destroy me financially and disappear with Vanessa. I met Angela at 7 a.m. the next morning at a coffee shop 3 blocks from her office. I couldn't risk Derek seeing us together. I showed her the forged loan documents, the transfer agreements, the emails with Vanessa. Angela's face darkened as she read. This isn't just an affair, Nora. This is systematic financial fraud. Identity theft. We're talking potential criminal charges. I just want a divorce, I said. I want out. You'll get your divorce, Angela said. But first we're reporting the fraud to the bank and the police. That loan was taken illegally. You're not responsible for it. She pulled out her own laptop, typing quickly. We're also filing an emergency motion to freeze all marital assets. Derek can't move another dollar while this is sorted out. He'll know I'm aware, I said. He'll run. Angela looked up. Let him try. We've got everything documented. And Nora? She closed her laptop. When he brings you those authorization papers tonight, sign nothing. Tell him you want your own lawyer to review them first. Derek came home at 6 with a blue folder and a smile. I've got the paperwork from the financial advisor. Just needs your signature, and we're all set. He spread documents across the kitchen table. They looked official, dense with legal language designed to confuse. It's a lot to read, I said, picking up the first page. What exactly am I signing? Just account reorganization, Derek said quickly, consolidating our debts into a more efficient structure. The advisor said it'll save us $12,000 in interest over 5 years. I saw my name listed as primary account holder. Saw debt obligations transferred to my sole responsibility. Saw Derek's name carefully absent from all liability clauses. This seems complicated, I said. I should probably have someone look at it. Make sure I understand what I'm agreeing to. Derek's smile tightened. The advisor already explained everything. It's straightforward. I know, but my dad always said to have a lawyer review anything financial. I set the papers down, just to be safe. Derek's jaw clenched. We don't need to pay a lawyer for something this simple. I'd feel better if someone explained it to me properly, I insisted, keeping my voice soft, uncertain. Playing the confused widow who needed professional guidance. Derek stared at the unsigned papers, frustration flickering across his face. He needed my signature. Needed to transfer his crimes onto me before everything unraveled. Fine, he said finally. But don't take too long. The advisor said these rates are time-sensitive. He left the papers on the table and went upstairs. I took photos of every page, sent them to Angela, then hid the folder in my desk drawer. The next morning, Angela filed for divorce. She also filed fraud reports with our bank, identity theft claims with the police, and emergency motions to freeze all accounts Derek controlled. The court granted a temporary restraining order on marital assets pending investigation. At 2:15 that afternoon, Derek was served at his office. The process server walked into his department meeting and handed him divorce papers, fraud notifications, and asset freeze orders in front of 18 colleagues. By 2:30, Derek's credit cards stopped working, his bank accounts locked, everything he'd stolen, trapped in legal purgality. Derek came home at 4 p.m. I was sitting at the kitchen table, exactly where I'd refused to sign his fraudulent papers. He slammed the door hard enough to rattle the windows. What the hell did you do? He screamed. I didn't flinch. I'd been preparing for this moment for days. I filed for divorce, I said calmly, and reported the fraud. His face went purple. You humiliated me, at work, in front of everyone. My accounts are frozen, my credit cards don't work. I can't access any of our money. You mean the money you stole? I asked. The $75,000 home equity loan you took out using my forged signature? Derek's expression flickered. Calculation replacing rage. You can't prove I forged anything. I pulled out my phone, showed him the forensic signature analysis Angela had commissioned. The expert's report clearly showed his handwriting patterns in my forged signature. Your handwriting is distinctive, I said. The bank's fraud department agrees. Derek moved toward me and I stood up, stepping back. That's not the only copy, I said. Everything's with my lawyer and the police. Derek sank into a chair, his anger collapsing into something that looked like panic. This is insane. We can work this out. We don't need lawyers and police. Just talk to me, Nora. Like you talked to me while you spent our savings on Vanessa? I asked. His face went pale. I found your emails, Derek. All of them. The hotel bookings, the jewelry, the plans for your future together. I know you spent $47,000 on her in 8 months. I laid printed bank statements on the table, each fraudulent charge highlighted and dated. March 15th, 2 months before Dad got sick. Hotel Cambridge, $512. April 3rd, dinner at Oceana, $340. June 29th, Tiffany necklace, $1,800. I kept going, my voice steady. Then Dad went into the hospital in late August. The charges got bigger. September 2nd, $3,500 cash withdrawal. September 6th, the day he died, you took the funeral money. September 10th, yesterday, Lakeview Resort, while I buried him. Derek stared at the evidence, 8 months of systematic theft laid out in chronological order. You were snooping through my computer? Derek said weakly, still trying to make me the villain. I accessed our shared computer in our shared home, I corrected. Every transaction you made with our joint money, every email you sent on our shared internet, every lie you told while stealing from our marriage, all documented. Derek's hands shook on the table. You don't understand. The money was going to come back. I was investing it, building something for us. You were building a life with Vanessa, I said. Using money you stole from me, then you forged my signature on a $75,000 loan so you could steal even more. I pulled out the debt transfer papers he'd tried to make me sign, and when you'd taken everything, you planned to stick me with all the debt and leave. The truth hit him visibly, his entire plan exposed. The police are investigating identity theft charges, I continued. The bank is pursuing fraud charges, and my lawyer has every email, every receipt, every forged document. Derek looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw real fear. What do you want? The divorce took 4 months to finalize. Derek fought it initially, then gave up when the forensic evidence became overwhelming. The forged signature on the home equity loan. The documented affair spanning 8 months. The systematic theft from our joint accounts, escalating during my father's final illness. His lawyer advised him to settle quickly. The fraudulent $75,000 loan was reversed after the bank's investigation confirmed forgery. The debt was cleared from my name entirely. Our house, the one we'd bought together, was sold, and the proceeds split according to Massachusetts law. Derek's half went directly to restitution payments. The bank pursued criminal charges for the identity theft. Derek pleaded guilty to avoid trial, receiving 18 months probation, a $10,000 fine, and court-ordered restitution for the funeral expenses I'd borrowed from my aunt. Vanessa left him 2 weeks after his accounts froze. Apparently, love wasn't stronger than his credit limit. I moved into a small apartment near the hospital where I worked. Started over with exactly half of what we'd built together. It wasn't the ending I'd imagined, but it was honest. 6 months later, I visited my father's grave on what would have been his birthday. The grass had grown over the raw earth, making everything look settled and peaceful. I brought yellow roses. I handled it, Dad, I said to the granite headstone. Just like you taught me. The wind picked up, rustling the cemetery trees. I thought about the woman I'd been 6 months ago, sitting in the funeral director's office, discovering betrayal while planning her father's burial. That woman died that day. This woman, the one who documented everything and built an airtight case, was harder. Smarter. I didn't scream or beg. I gathered evidence, followed the law, and won quietly. My father would have been proud.